Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going into the third and final video in my series of videos about the TOPIK test. So we already looked at the reading and listening test, and today we're going to look at the writing test. Now the writing test is pretty different from the other two in that it is not multiple choice. You have to actually write your answers. Also, the writing test occurs immediately following the listening test. So it's in the same session. You'll do your listening test for 60 minutes and then they'll collect your papers and you'll start the writing test. The writing test is 50 minutes long and you only have to answer 4 questions. Those 4 questions include 2 short answer questions and then 2 essays, which in turn is 1 short essay and 1 long essay. So I'm going to go through all of the types of questions first, and then I'm also going to show you how to write on Korean essay paper, or wongoji as it's called. The first thing I want to draw your attention to is the amount of points that each question is worth, because this is really important and this will kind of tell you how you should take the test. So the test is 100 points in total. The first and second question, these short answer questions, are worth 10 points each, and you only really have to write maybe 2 words for each of these blank spaces. So you're getting a lot of points for each word in these first 2 questions. For the essays, the short essay, 200 to 300 characters, is 30 points. And the long essay, 600 to 700 characters, is 50 points. So if we add up all of the possible points you can get and compare it to the amount of words you have to write, the first 2 questions are worth a lot more per word than the essays. So I think it's really important to focus on getting these ones right. Even if it takes you slightly longer than necessary, just make sure you get them right. For the essays, especially for the long essay, try and focus more on reaching the word limit than writing some kind of amazing essay or anything. So that's just a short aside about the points for each one. Now let's have a look at each question in turn, and I'll give you some tips how to answer them. So the first one is just put whatever goes into this blank space. So complete the sentence basically. These will be sort of differing levels of difficulty, but usually there will be 1 or maybe 2 correct answers or acceptable answers. So let's have a look at this and I'll give you a possible answer. So 수미 씨, 그동안 고마웠습니다. 저는 다음 달이면 홍콩으로 일을 something. 제가 원하는 회사에 취직을 해서 기쁘지만 수미 씨를 자주 못 볼 것 같아 아쉽습니다. 선물을 준비했는데 선물이 수미 씨 마음에 something. So we have to finish off these 2 sentences. For the first one, he's saying next month to Hong Kong, work something. So to answer this question, you have to think about what he could be doing for the work. If it were something like 홍콩에서 일을 something, then you might just say, 홍콩에서 일을 해야 됩니다. I have to work in Hong Kong. But it's not 홍콩에서, it's 홍콩으로, which means to Hong Kong, going to Hong Kong. So that means there has to be something about going to Hong Kong for work, or going Hong Kong in order to work. So one that would fit pretty well here would be 홍콩으로 일을 하러 갑니다, or 하러 가야 됩니다. I have to go in order to work, or I have to go for work. So these are really important distinctions here. You have to make sure that the word that you're putting in fits with whatever grammar they've used in the sentence. So just something to be aware of there. Alright, for the last one, here we have 선물을 준비했는데, I prepared a present. 선물이 수미 씨 마음에 something. So I prepared a present, and the present in your mind is something. So this is hinting at saying, I hope you like the present. That's probably the only real translation. I hope you like it. So in this case, you need to know that one way of phrasing you like, or to enjoy something, is 마음에 들다. So 마음에 들면 좋겠습니다. So I hope you like the present. I hope the present pleases you. I hope it enters your mind, literally. So 수미 씨 마음에 들면 or 들었으면 좋겠습니다. Or maybe 들기를 바랍니다 could maybe be an answer. But yeah, you have to go through like this and think about what could be the possible answers. But again, remember, they're not really trying to trick you. They're trying to test you. So just go with whatever answer seems most logical, and that's probably going to be right. Because if there were too many different answers, then it would be too hard for them to mark as well. So go with whatever makes the most sense. The next one is going to be similar, although the first one is almost always some kind of email or letter. The second one is more of just a text you have to finish. So, 별은 지구에서 멀리 떨어져 있다. 그래서 별빛이 지구까지 오는데 많은 시간이 걸린다. 지구와 가장 가까운 별의 빛도 지구까지 오는데 4억 년이 걸린다. 만약 우리가 이 별을 본다면 우리는 이 별의 현재 모습이 아니라 4억 년 전에 이처럼 별빛은 오랜 시간이 지나야 지구에 도달한다. 그래서 어떤 별이 사라져도 우리는 그 사실을 바로 알지 못하고 아주 오랜 시간이 Alright, so you'll see that this text is significantly more complicated, significantly more difficult topic than the first one. But we can still figure out, because the language and the grammar used is actually not too difficult. It's actually not too complicated. So it's talking about stars are far away from the Earth, so it takes a long time for starlight to arrive at Earth. And it's saying it takes 400 million years, even for the closest star to the Earth, for its light to reach Earth. Something like that. Anyway, the most important thing is to look at the sentence that we need to finish. So 만약 우리가 이 별을 본다면, so if we look at this star, 우리는 이 별의 현재 모습 아니라, we not the star's current form, not the star's current shape or image, 아니라 4억 년 전에, the 400,000 year ago something. So if we finish the sentence in English, it would be, if we look at a star, we are not seeing the star's current image, we are seeing the star's image from 400 million years ago. So how would we say this in Korean? Again, try and keep it as simple as possible. Try not to put too many different grammatical things in there. You can basically just copy what they said before. 이 별의 현재 모습, so current image. 4억 년 전의 모습. So the first word should be 모습. That's what we're seeing. 모습을 본다. We are seeing the star's image. We're seeing its image. So I would write 모습을 본다 here. Okay, so let's look at the last sentence as well. 그래서 어떤 별이 사라져도, so even if a certain star disappears, 우리는 그 사실을 바로 알지 못하고, we can't know that fact or that truth immediately. 아주 오랜 시간이 something. A long time something. And since we know from this ending here, we know it's 시간이, so it's the time is doing something. The time is the subject. So I would say in English it would be a long time has to pass, or a long time must pass if we are to know it. That's how you'd say it in English. In Korean, it's actually pretty easier. A more literal translation might be only if a long time passes, we can know it. So I would say something like 아주 오랜 시간이 지나야 알 수 있다. Or that's probably the best way you would say it. So 시간이 지나야, meaning only if it passes, only if a long time passes, 알 수 있다. We can know. So that's probably going to be a good answer for this one. Okay, now let's look at the essays. These are obviously the much longer answers, but you can take a very systematic approach to them. So the first essay is a short one, so 200 to 300 characters, and this is always going to ask you to describe a graph or a chart or some kind of diagram. So it's going to present you with some information and present you with a lot of vocabulary and ask you to write using that vocabulary. And one of the best tips I can give you for this is just use exactly the same wording that they use. You don't need to rewrite things. You don't need to come up with your own way of phrasing things. You can just copy what they've written, the way that they've phrased it. So if we have a look at this one, we have a graph here on the left, 전체 매출액. We have 2014 and 2018, and it's risen by a lot. For the second one, 사용기기에 따른 매출액. Again, we have the same period, 2014 to 2018. And you can see that smartphones have gone up a lot and computers have gone up a little bit. And here we have the reasons for the change, 변화 원인. So 온라인으로 다양한 상품 구매 가능. So the possibility to buy products through online, to buy various products online. shopping 접근성. So the approach for shopping is bigger for smartphones than for computers. Anyway, given all this information, you just have to describe exactly what you see and be as blunt and analytical as possible. This question is not about creative writing or anything. It's literally just present the information as logically as you can. So in this one, I would say just write exactly what you see. But a good thing to do before the test, since you don't know exactly what kind of graph you're going to get, is to remember a lot of these common sort of sentences for describing statistics. So for example, an example in English would be the total sales, which was 46 trillion in 2014, rose sharply to 92 trillion in 2018. That's basically a stock sentence that you can use for a lot of these questions because a lot of them deal with years and changes over years. So remembering those kind of sentences is really useful. Another kind of sentence would be, the reasons for this change are as follows. And in Korean, it's 다음과 같다. So is like the following. And that's another thing, you can just put that in. The reasons are as follows, and then you give the reasons. There's two here, and you just kind of rephrase this into a sentence. Okay, last one. This is a longer essay, and it'll be writing your opinion. So this is a bit more of a creative essay. You have to come up with your own thoughts a little bit more. But again, they're trying to see your ability in the language. They're not trying to see you write some award-winning essay or anything. You just need to write in a way that makes sense and that's clear. So you can spend, I would spend a little bit of time planning what you're going to write, but then just get to writing. And especially because there's 600 to 700 characters you have to write, and you're only getting 50 points. You're only getting 5 times the amount of points that you got for this question, right? So you have to write pretty quickly, and the quality of the writing, I would say, doesn't have to be as high as these previous questions. Just write. Get the first 3 questions for this test done, and the last question, just try and finish it. Just try and write as much as you can. So this is just asking you to write about this topic. So 사람은 누구나 청소년기를 거쳐 어른이 된다. So everybody goes through adolescence to become an adult. 아동에서 어른으로 넘어가는 이 시기에 많은 청소년들은 혼란과 방황을 겪으며 성장한다. So in this period of transitioning from a child to an adult, many adolescents go through confusion and embarrassment, I guess. 아래 내용을 중심으로 청소년기의 중요성에 대한 자신의 생각을 쓰라. So write your thoughts about the importance of adolescence, the importance of puberty or the adolescent period, using these 3 sentences as a base, or write them around these 3 sentences. So 청소년기가 중요한 이유는 무엇인가? Why is the adolescent period important? 청소년들은 이 시기에 주로 어떤 특징을 보이는가? What do adolescents, what kind of characteristics do adolescents show in this period? And 청소년의 올바른 성장을 돕기 위해 어떤 노력이 필요한가? In order to help adolescents have the right growth, what kind of effort is required? And the questions are always going to be like this. They're very broad, they're very open-ended, so you're able to write whatever you want. Now here we see an example of wongoji. I'm going to show you how to write like this as well and show you at least some of the rules about writing like this. But yeah, again, for this second question, for this long essay, just write as much as you can. Briefly plan it. You can use their structure for your essay. You write a short paragraph about each one. But yeah, just write as much as you can. Okay, now I'm going to show you guys how you write on Korean essay paper. So this is the answer sheet that you're given. It's 2 pages. So the first one has questions 51 and 52 at the top, and it has the short essay at the bottom. And after that, you have the long essay paper. So you can see on the side as well, it tells you how many characters you've written. Each row is 25 characters long, and then that allows you to pretty easily count how many you've written. So in terms of reaching your word count, you can get a bit of you can get a sense of how fast or how slow you're writing. Okay, now I'm going to explain to you how to use wongoji, which is Korean essay paper. So as you know, Korean is written in these syllable blocks, and that lends itself pretty well to writing in a grid. There are a lot of rules for this, and it's sort of confusing sometimes, but once you've done a bit of practice, it'll be pretty easy to get your head around. One thing I didn't mention before was that you need to write your text always in plain form. So you don't write with 였습니다 or 했어요. You always write with 했다, 한다, 하다. All of these with the da at the end. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Always write in the plain form for essays because you're not talking to somebody, you're just writing. So there's no need to use the honorifics or anything like that. And remember, another thing, that plain form is part of 반말. Plain form is essentially, it factors into casual speech. So if you ever need to say I, you need to say na, not 저. So you say na, ne, instead of 저 or je. So a few things to remember there. I'm going to leave a link to this website in the description. This is a converter, so you can write in any text and it'll convert that text into wongoji. So I've got an example here from Wikipedia. It's the Wikipedia page about the topic test. And yeah, we're just going to go through and I'm going to try and explain as much as I can these rules for wongoji. So every syllable takes 1 square. That's pretty self-explanatory. But it becomes a bit more complicated when you have things like English letters, when you have numbers, punctuation. So let's go through a few basic rules. First is whenever you start a paragraph, you need to start that paragraph 1 space across. So in other words, the first line of your paragraph needs to have a blank space on the left side. Every line after that needs to have a character in the first space. So you can see here. First line we have a space, then after that this whole paragraph starts from the first space, then we get to the end of the paragraph, and the next paragraph starts again with a blank space in the first line. So that's an important thing to remember here. When you finish your paragraph, you can just leave the rest of that line completely blank and start from the next one. Another thing to remember is that a line cannot start with a full stop or a comma. That full stop has to go either somewhere in the middle of the line, or it can even be connected to the end. So I'll show you an example of that here. Here we have this 시험이다, and the da is on the second last block, the second last box. So there's plenty of space here for a full stop. But if we have a word down here, okay, for example here, we have 쓰기, comma, 듣기, comma, but we need to put this comma somewhere. This comma can't go outside of the box, and it also can't go at the start of the next line, because that would look weird. So in this case, the comma can actually be included in the same box as the gi. So 듣기 and the comma is squeezed into that box as well. So this applies for commas and for full stops. They're both the same. They can be fitted into the final box if necessary. Otherwise, they have their own box. So it also goes for decimal points. So here I've put in a number so you can see what it looks like. 65.588. The full stop has its own box, or the decimal point in this case has its own box. Okay, next let's look at numbers. Numbers can go 2 into 1 box. And for most numbers, they will just have 2 in 1 box. So for example here, 2006 is 20 and then 06. Or here, 12 is just 12. So 2 numbers can go in one box. But let's say you have a number that has 3 digits. In that case, the first 2 go together, and then the last digit just goes by itself. So again, if we look at the same example, we have 65 together, we have a decimal point, then we have 588. The 5, 8 go together, and then the 8 goes by itself. So numbers can go 2 into a box. If there's an extra number, it just goes on the end by itself. Okay, and last one is English letters. English capital letters go by themselves. So you can only fit one capital letter into a box. An example here would be this S topic. The S is a capital letter, so it goes by itself. This hyphen is punctuation, it goes by itself. But for lowercase letters, just like numbers, they can go 2 in a box. So here we have to, pi. We have the extra letter, the extra K, that goes by itself. Topic, and same thing here, B topic, or here, topic. So if you need to write any English letters, which you might not, you might not need to write it, then you have to write it like this. So capital letters by themselves, lowercase letters can go in pairs, if necessary. Now I'm going to give you a few tips for padding out your word count. So like most essay writing in school, you're trying to reach this word limit, and there are a few tricks you can do to reach that in Korean. So one would be, for the short answer question, you often have to write about percentages and statistics. And whenever you write the percentage, instead of writing the mark, write %, in Korean. So that's going to be most common. So instead of 60%, you'd write 60%. That's going to be one way to add some extra letters to your text. The next one would be, whenever you have a conjugation of a word in the present tense, there's a longer form that you can use. So one example would be 했다. So the past tense, the plain form past tense. So 했다. You can write that as 하였다, and that will add one extra letter to your writing. And if you do that for all of your sentence endings, you actually end up with quite a few extra letters. So 하였다, 되었다. There are a couple of grammatical points and certain words that you can substitute that will, 1, make your word count longer, and 2, can make your speech a little bit more interesting or a little bit more sophisticated. So one would be, for example, nevertheless in English, and you can write that in Korean as 그럼에도 불구하고. Or another one would be always using something like 하기 위해서. That's going to be quite a lot of letters instead of saying something else like 하려면, for example. Another one that sounds more sophisticated, instead of saying 하기 전에, you could say 하기 앞서. But yeah, there's lots of these examples that you can find, and I would recommend, to get a sense for this kind of writing, just read as much as you can of this sort of writing, of essays, of this plain form writing. If you want a good source of plain form writing, really Wikipedia is a good source for that. So look up any article you want on Korean Wikipedia. It'll all be written in this 한다, 하다, 했다, this plain form, and that'll give you a good sense for how to write it. But yeah, that's all for this video. If you have any questions about the writing test, leave them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. Or if you have any questions about the topic test in general, or really anything else, feel free to leave a comment and I'll do my best to answer it. Let me know what other videos you'd like to see in the future, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.